Hey y'all, so today I'm doing a deep dive into Senator Kamala Harris' leadership on this coronavirus pandemic response. Listen, Black women don't ever get credit for shit. And so I'm absolutely committed to changing that, in particular with Senator Kamala Harris. And so if you look at her record, which I will detail in great depth throughout the course of this video, I'm not making an attempt to make it 2 minutes so you can watch the full video on YouTube. It's not going to be soundbite worthy. It's not going to be meme worthy, but I assure you it will be reassuring, like it has been for me, to know that Kamala is on the job. Okay. But if I can give you a very, very high level view of the kinds of things that Kamala Harris has been doing, let's talk about the fact that she's introduced legislation. She introduced legislation. Normally, FEMA it can spring into action and provide assistance to people for a natural disaster. Pandemics are not considered a natural disaster, so she has introduced legislation to change that. There are no co-sponsors on her legislation at this point, but she did introduce that on March 19th. That's important. Through her committee assignments, she has very key committee assignments that give her oversight authority. One committee assignment in particular, she's on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, but her subcommittee assignment is on the federal spending oversight and emergency management. Sounds kind of important, right, when we have a coronavirus response. And so we obviously see that the Trump administration needs to be pushed on this. She has been using her authority to do that. She's written letters to Donald Trump himself. She's written letters to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which is now gaining in more attention, but she was on that back on March 5th. She has done town halls. She did an NAACP teletown hall on coronavirus on Sunday. I don't know if it was last Sunday or the Sunday before, but it was a Sunday. She has been using her platform to raise money for domestic workers. She has used her platform to raise awareness and to try to combat racism and xenophobia, as well as raise awareness for sexual assault victims who are at home with their abusers because of the shelter in place and the social distancing that's happening. And so she has done so many things. I'm going to get through them all in this video that I can possibly get to. So let's start off with the more pressing. Let's start off with February 12th. Okay, February 12th. That was a hearing that was held. Now, mind you, there wasn't all this panic at this time. There wasn't this massive response from the government at this time. Senator Kamala Harris, during this hearing, highlighting this was a Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing. And she highlighted the fact that there were no current government officials for the Trump administration that attended the meeting, this hearing. Now, there were former officials that attended the hearing, and she asked questions, pertinent questions to them about a variety of things. But she did want to, highlight the fact that the Trump administration people weren't there. They were unwilling to attend, and they had no damn good reason to attend. So that was our first hint that there was something wrong, okay, with this Trump administration's response to that. But she was all over it. This was something that was very, very, very high on her priority list. And there's video of this. I will show you guys the clip of the video in the thread. So, and by now you're on YouTube. So on YouTube, you will see a link to a Twitter thread. Go check that out. That will have more information, more references from what I'm seeing. But a lot of this information that I'm seeing, you can find at harris.senate.gov. You can find on congress.gov. You can find on Twitter. You can find it in a variety of ways. So that's an important thing. So what I kind of just want to do is I'm going to go through chronologically, starting from earliest to latest, with some of the things that Senator Kamala Harris has been championing. So again, February 12th, that is, now keep in mind, it feels like ages ago, right? The campaign is still in full swing. You haven't had Super Tuesday by yet. I don't think you've even had Iowa at this point, but Senator Kamala Harris was all over this. So that was February 12th. Let's talk about what happened next. I'm going through harris.senate.gov. Other stuff is happening in between here, so don't take a lack of of something specific on coronavirus is the lack of action. Trust me, when you go through her press releases, you will see that there is lots and lots of things happening. Like, for instance, the passage of the anti-lynching legislation happened on the House side. February 26th, Harris to Trump administration's coronavirus response threatening our nation's public health. Okay, so this is a press release where Kamala Harris demands answers on the administration's plans on transparency and funding for state and local governments, and demands administration's plan to increase domestic production of respirator masks. So you guys, if you're watching any of this coronavirus stuff right now, March 20th, what are they talking about over and over and over again? The fact that we do not have enough masks in our nation's stockpile or in the hospitals themselves. And so I'm just going to read through this a little bit. She wrote this letter directly to President Donald J. Trump. And I probably won't read through the whole thing. I'll just do the highlights. But like I said, if you're here, it's because you don't have a short attention span, Sham. But let me just kind of read through what the press release says a little bit. It says Kamala Harris wrote a letter highlighting the Trump administration's propensity to minimize its challenges combined with its long-standing refusal to participate in adequate oversight. It's now threatening our nation's public health. She talks about how they have not yet informed the American public of a plan to address this global health crisis. Talks about California's been on the front lines of this and how they've received insufficient guidance. And she says, we cannot afford to continue to wait for credible, comprehensive plan to address the crisis. Your administration's... Okay, I already got through that. So, again, March 26th, to President Donald J. Trump. Dear Mr. President, I write to express my deep concern about your administration's response to the 2019 novel coronavirus. Since the first case was confirmed in the United States over a month ago, your administration has failed to take necessary steps to address the crisis and provide adequate information to Congress and the American people, raising serious questions about your administration's ability to prepare for and contain COVID-19. So she takes Trump to task for his misstatements. And she talks about, for weeks, I have been calling for public hearings in the Senate with senior officials of the U.S. Departments of Health and Human Services. Almost 6 weeks after the crisis, Congress is finally getting our first opportunity to question administration officials in public hearings. So this is a point that I want to highlight. This is where the Republicans being in charge of the Senate makes a difference. You're, as a Democrat, you can call for hearings, but the Republicans control the ability to call these hearings or not. Now, COVID is not a Republican versus a Democratic virus, but we know that Republicans ain't shit. So, she says your emergency supplemental appropriations request from February 24th did not address my concerns regarding her administration's strategy to prevent further spread of the virus in the United States. It fell short of recommendations from public health experts. It relied on raiding public health funding from other critical priorities. She's outlining all of these really problematic things. Your fiscal 2021 budget request that would cut funding for programs critical to response efforts, including CDC and prevention, and the World Health Organization. Your Health and Human Services Secretary has admitted the United States only has 10% of the protective masks needed for U.S. healthcare workers. So this is the demands that she makes, okay? Correct problems with COVID-19 diagnostic test kits and make them available to hospitals and health labs in all states. Take all necessary steps to guarantee the adequate supply of protective face masks for U.S. healthcare workers and American public, including to produce them domestically. We already know that was not met, but she did raise the warning about the need for that. February 26th. Ensure greater transparency and better coordination with state and local entities, including appointing a single federal official responsible for the COVID-19 response. I think that has since been done. Immediately reimburse state and local entities for all costs incurred in responding to the virus. Make funds available to state and local authorities now for ongoing and future response efforts so they are not forced to rely on federal reimbursement, and commit the administration officials to fully cooperate with Congress. So that was a letter, again, that Senator Kamala Harris sent to Donald Trump February 26th. Let's move on. She also pressured March 4th Mitch McConnell to take up coronavirus emergency funding without delay. You know how Mitch McConnell sits on shit and doesn't bother to vote for it. So that's something that she has really been on top of. March 5th, Harris questions admin officials on coronavirus preparations for vulnerable populations. Okay, so this is an important one. She questioned, so this is the Homeland Security official Ken Cuccinelli, or however you say his stupid ass name. You know he's a whole ass racist. And so Senator Kamala Harris questioned him, pressed him on, how they're making preparations for vulnerable populations, people, who are workers without paid sick leave, federal employees without teleworking options, and undocumented immigrants. Oh my God. Now y'all saw the press conference today on what they're doing with people who are coming here illegally. They're immediately saying they're going to just deport them. They're using coronavirus as an excuse to just immediately deport them. No due cause or anything like that. So I won't go into the transcript or anything like that, but I will include this. I will include this in the tweet thread that I will have on her response. But this is something, again, where Senator Kamala Harris has consistently thought about all different people that are impacted in any particular crisis, not just with coronavirus, but I'm always impressed by that. How she has pressed the administration on that. That's March 5th. Also on March 5th, so the Senate did pass the coronavirus emergency funding. Bernie Sanders was absent for that vote, as well as somebody else. I'll let you figure out who that person is. She also sent a letter demanding information on the coronavirus preparedness in federal prisons. This letter was sent to the Federal Bureau of Prisons Director Michael Carvajal. Okay. So, and she wanted to know what he was doing in order to, protect these vulnerable populations. She says as of 2020, there were over 175,000 incarcerated men and women in federal prisons. Our incarcerated population face severe threats to their health and safety every day, and BOP must prioritize and work diligently to improve conditions nationwide. And it is also incumbent upon them to prevent outbreaks and safely and humanely treat all individuals. So she posed a series of 4 questions demanding a response to her questions by March 9th. No, she asked questions about how many BOP officials are currently working on the agency's response to coronavirus. Has BOP received any direction or guidance from Attorney General Barr? Take a wild guess. How is BOP coordinating with public health officials on issues related to coronavirus that may impact our incarcerated population? Which agencies are providing guidance to BOP about the steps necessary to prevent, detect, and respond to coronavirus outbreak among our incarcerated population? Does BOP have a plan to provide treatment? Oh, so these have multiple parts. Okay, so I thought it was only 4 questions. Does BOP have a plan to provide treatment to incarcerated individuals that entails more than isolation? How is BOP coordinating with federal public health officials on issues related to coronavirus that may impact correctional staff? Which agencies are providing guidance to BOP about the steps necessary to prevent, detect, and respond to coronavirus outbreak among correctional staff? Does BOP have a plan to offer paid leave or support to impacted correctional staff? And lastly, does the CDC plan to test or screen for coronavirus in BOP facilities and private prisons? If yes, please explain the timing and protocols that will be followed. And so this might be overkill. This might be more information than what you guys feel like is necessary, which is fine. Even that means you probably turned it off by this point. But I do think that it is, important to see how in depth this response is, to know and understand what kind of questions are being asked, what kinds of concerns are being shown, and what you know what she's working on. Um, so on March 10th, there was a letter with more questions. This time, I guess Senator Warren led up that response. A lot of it you will find is actually a retread of what Senator Kamala Harris asked on March 5th. But more the merrier in joining the party to, I shouldn't say party, but joining the concern and the advocacy for incarcerated individuals. So again, March 5th is when Senator Kamala Harris initially pushed for the Bureau of Prisons to respond to their preparedness. And March 10th, other colleagues joined in. It was Senator Warren, Tammy Baldwin, Richard Blumenthal, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Ed Markey, Jeff Merkley, Bernie Sanders, Chris Van Hollen, Brian Schatz, Sherrod Brown, Mazie Hirono, Tina Smith, Mark Warner. All of those senators were on that March 10th letter, 5 days after Kamala's letter, though. And I don't mean that with shade, it's just chronologically accurate. Okay, March 11th, coronavirus. Harris, Feinstein, Democrats push Scalia to advocate for workers, question DOL's absence from the task force. All right, so here, they demanded, Senator along with other people demanded, apparently it was 30 Democratic senators in total, demanded from the Secretary of Labor, Eugene Scalia, to ensure federal workers' response to the federal government's response to coronavirus address the immediate and long-term needs of the workers. The Democrats expressed concern regarding the Department of Labor's continued absence or exclusion from the president's coronavirus task force. Yeah, how the hell is the Department of Labor not part of that? But more specifically, they raised a variety of issues. They talked about protection advocacy of workers seems to be the biggest concern. So they wanted to know, here's some specific questions. Have you or the heads of any of the agencies within your department been invited to join the president's task force? Have they voiced the needs of workers and the federal government's COVID-19 response? Have you communicated with members of congressional staff or the Congress about the needs of workers? So this is all about workers. March 11th. March 12th, Senator Kamala Harris, as well as Kristen Gillibrand and Cory Booker, held a press conference to demand the United States Senate include paid sick leave and paid family and medical leave as components of any legislative package to address the outbreak of coronavirus. And here's the bottom line. Senator Kamala Harris says paid sick leave will save lives. Paid sick leave will keep communities safer. It's just that basic. 2/3 of low-income workers do not have paid sick leave, and when presented with the issue of whether they will stay home or while they are sick or feed their babies or keep a roof over their head, it's logical to believe they will go to work so they can keep taking care of their family. So what the House is proposing is not only right in terms of what we need as public policy in the United States in terms of how we treat our workers, but it is a very smart way to address what is currently very significant in the public health crisis in the United States of America. And so they really strongly advocated for paid sick leave. March 13th, again, Senator Kamala Harris pressuring Mitch McConnell to cancel the weekend and vote on the coronavirus bill. March 13th, Senator Kamala Harris calls on water, electricity, telecom companies to cease shutoffs during coronavirus pandemics. And so she sent this letter to, she sent a letter to trade associations for the water, electricity, and telecommunications industry. Clean water is a human right and necessary for hand washing. Well, electricity is vital as a public health officials encourage people to stay home. And access to telecommunications is a critical lifeline for individuals to remain informed and continue to participate in our economy as a society. As the crisis evolves, it's not just my state of California. 40 million people will be impacted in some way, whether they themselves or family member are falling ill, work and school closings, travel disruptions, and other unforeseen complications. And so this is what she sent. She sent this to the Television and Internet Association, the Rural Broadband Association, American Waterworks Association, American Public Power Association, Edison Electric Institute, U.S. Telecom, Natural Rural Electric Cooperative Association, Natural Rural Water Association, Competitive Carriers Association, and the CTIA Wireless Association. Only Senator Kamala Harris was the signee on this letter. So that's very clear advocacy on her part. March 16th. March 16th. Harris demands public statement on avoiding immigration enforcement at public health facilities. Now, what we don't want, obviously, is for people to avoid getting care because they are afraid of being deported. That's like common sense, right? And so Senator Kamala Harris sent a letter to, this is again March 16th, to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security official Ken Cuccinelli, requesting that DHS issue a public formal statement affirming that both ICE and CPB will avoid conducting enforcement actions at public health facilities during the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. And this is a follow-up on March 5th. She asked Cuccinelli during a hearing whether he was willing to issue a such statement. And he responded that he had previously done so, but that statement was apparently only circulated to members of the press. And so Senator Kamala Harris is pressing that this be issued to the public. And so there's a quite extensive letter here. Again, you can find all this stuff on harris.senate.gov. I don't have any secret tricks, y'all. I'm just going to public information. Like motherfuckers who be like, what's such and such doing? I haven't seen this person. Really? But did you go to their website? Because usually you can find information on their website. All right. March 16th. So that was that. Now today, if you guys saw that the Trump administration is using this as an excuse to be racist as fuck. So even though, you know, whether these demands are being met or whether these questions are being answered or whether it's the administration is heeding these things, it's still important. Power concedes nothing without a demand. That's Frederick Douglass. And somebody sent me that quote and I was like, oh my God, this is the perfect quote pretty much for pretty much everything. But I think that it's important to understand the morals and the efforts that are being put forth by certain people. In particular, you know, the next person who's going to be, we're talking about the Veep sticks and people want to do the whole fill in the blank black thing. But, you know, one of the huge things that's going to be a part of the next administration is still responding to coronavirus. This is expected to be an 18-month public health crisis. And so we need somebody to be in that White House that understands the full force of the government, that understands what needs to be done in terms of coronavirus. It's obvious that Senator Kamala Harris has not only done the homework herself, but she has been using her platform to hold the Trump administration accountable and try to push for changes. Now, imagine if she's actually put in a position to run up a coronavirus task force as the vice president of the United States. That would be an incredibly important person to have in that role. There are not people who are equally as engaged that have been bandied about as potential VP people that can fit that bill. Kamala Harris fits a lot of bills. which I will go into in a different video. But in particular, the coronavirus crisis is something that we need somebody, or we're going to need somebody, assuming we have elections and assuming that Biden wins, we're going to need somebody who is a right-hand woman to Biden, who can really, really take the reins on this coronavirus response. All right, March 17th, Harris, Democratic senators urge Trump to immediately maximize telework for federal employees. I won't go into any more detail on that. Now, this is one that I hadn't seen yet. This is March 18th. Harris leads colleagues in seeking answers on coronavirus preparedness in immigration detention facilities. Now, remember, we still have all those kids in cages. We still have all these families in these facilities. And we need to understand what's happening with them. And so this is March 18th, when Senator Kamala Harris led her colleagues in a letter to DHS Acting Secretary Chad Wolf, ICE Acting Director Matthew Albence, CBP Acting Commissioner Mark Morgan. This is completely fucking ridiculous that we have these major agencies that do not have Senate confirmed directors. But similar to the lines of what she sent to the Bureau of Prisons, talking about vulnerable detained persons are especially vulnerable to the spread of infection, and ensuring sufficient care and monitoring is uniquely challenging. According to public health experts, detained individuals are at special risk of infection given their living situations, and may also be less able to participate in proactive measures to keep themselves safe, and infection control is challenging in these settings. Now, remember, if you don't have compassion for prisoners, if you don't have compassion for detained individuals, remember that there are people that work in these facilities that go back home to their communities. If they go back home infected, that means they're going to infect more people. So it is important that public health, you cannot pick and choose the winners and losers unless everybody loses. Because if you try to pick this group is important, that group isn't, the unimportant group supposedly is going to infect the important group. So what good does that do? Protect everybody. So this was 25 other senators joined her in that letter to these particular people. And some people might say, well, what's the letter supposed to do? Again, I will reiterate that Congress is a co-equal branch of government, that Congress has oversight authority over the executive branch. Okay, in particular, the types of committee assignments that Senator Kamala Harris has, like for instance, the Judiciary Committee, gives her the oversight authority to at least ask these questions. Kamala issued a statement on the Senate coronavirus package. March 18th, Harris colleagues warned Trump administration Google of privacy concerns in COVID-19 screening website. So Senator Kamala Harris joined Senator Bob Menendez and 3 other colleagues in sending separate letters to Trump administration and tech giant Google, raising concerns over privacy and cybersecurity vulnerabilities involving a third-party coronavirus testing website announced last week by President Trump and coronavirus coordinator Deborah Bricks. So, people have talked about privacy, and I think that's a big deal. And so they are all over that in this particular one. They have a list of questions for them. You can again review this on harris.senate.gov. All right. Harris outlines March 18th, outlines priorities for a third coronavirus response package. So I don't know if you guys follow Kamala Harris on Medium, but she did a Medium post. And I think this is a really important thing that she did. She outlined her priorities in what she would like to see there. A lot of people are willing to put specifics behind it. People are willing to kind of just let the chips fall where they may, and they're just willing to just go along. But Senator Kamala Harris actually outlined very specific priorities, and I'll just go over them in high level detail. You can find this on the Medium Post. You can find it on her Senate, harrissenate.gov. Direct monthly cash assistance and consumer protection. For the duration of the coronavirus pandemic, the federal government must disperse direct monthly cash payments to individuals. The package must also include strong consumer protections, including suspending penalties for missed payments, any negative consumer credit reporting, prohibiting consumer debt collection and wage garnishment, banning all evictions, foreclosures, repossessions nationwide during the duration of the pandemic. Support for working families and small businesses. All workers need access to paid sick days, paid family, and medical leave, so those who are sick or need to take care of loved ones can do so without fear of losing their job or paycheck. Additionally, the U.S. must make available government-backed interest-free loans to businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and independent contractors to cover operating expenses and payroll needs in order to keep their employees fully employed. Any employer or industry that receives government assistance must provide all employees with paid sick days, paid family leave and medical leave, comprehensive insurance coverage, and stronger worker protections. Further, no employer receiving government assistance should be permitted to provide golden parachutes or exorbitant bonuses to its senior management or chief executive officer. Expanded access to emergency assistance through FEMA. So this is what she is talking about, her legislation. The legislation must amend the Stafford Act as prescribed under the forthcoming Pandemic Disaster Assistance Act to ensure that individuals and families can receive direct assistance through FEMA during pandemics, particularly disaster SNAP, disaster unemployment assistance, and other assistance related to childcare, funerals, and healthcare. Currently, individuals are only eligible for direct assistance during natural disasters such as hurricanes, earthquakes, or floods. DHS must prioritize public health to ensure that funds are not used in a way that violates CDC recommendations or otherwise endangers public health, especially as it relates to detention, enforcement, and removal. Fair treatment of tribes and territories. So I saw today a tweet that talked about how there was the first tribal coronavirus victim. So it immediately brought to mind this particular post, because I remember that it stood out to me that Senator Kamala Harris called for the fair treatment of tribes and territories. All roles and eligibility of assistance provided by the federal government to U.S. territories must be in parity with the assistance provided to the United States. Additionally, the federal government must make significant investments in tribal and native communities, particularly for tribal governments, urban Indian organizations, and the Indian Health Service. So that was Kamala Harris's priorities for a third coronavirus response package. Again, on March 19th, Kamala Harris sent a letter to the Bureau of Prisons. This time, we're pushing for the release of low-risk prisoners in federal prisons. And so this was very detailed. I saw today that Senator Warren and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley sent a letter to Donald Trump requesting that he use his powers of clemency. This one to the Bureau of Prisons actually goes, and I'm not saying it as a competition, but what did stick out to me is how it cited current the First Step Act and other things that are in the power of the Bureau of Prisons to handle themselves. And so, she specifically requests that the BOP take steps to reduce the incarcerated population, guard against potential exposure to coronavirus. And so here she has questions. And there are a lot of questions here, probably looks like about 20 or so. Taking the Bureau of Prisons to task and General Barr to task. And it's very detailed. I've been at this for a while, so I won't go through every single one, but I will say that it was a very impressive letter. So March 19th, Senator Kamala Harris introduces her Pandemic Assistance Disaster Act. So I kind of went through that a little bit already based on what her priorities were. But again, disaster SNAP, disaster unemployment assistance, other needs assistance is what this bill allows FEMA to be able to do. Currently, FEMA can provide these things for a natural disaster, hurricane, flood, but they cannot provide these things for a pandemic. And so that is a very, seems to me, straightforward, logical thing to amend to allow FEMA to do. Hopefully that passes. She had no co-sponsors on that. Okay, again on March 19th, Harris colleagues urged Trump admin to guarantee healthcare access for Americans with HIV, LGBTQ community amidst COVID-19 outbreak. And so this was Senator Kamala Harris, Bob Menendez, and 9 other people were expressing this concern and urging Alex Azar, Health and Human Services Secretary, about this issue. They have a list of questions that they're demanding a response about, but it's just worth noting that that is a particular group that was on top of mind. Also, March 19th, Harris, Senate Democrats to major health insurance fully cover testing treatment for COVID-19 without cost sharing requirements. And so Senator Kamala Harris joined Senator Chris Murphy and 14 other of their colleagues, calling on health insurance companies to remove barriers to care for Americans who find themselves diagnosed with COVID-19. So it's an extensive letter here. All right, so I've gone through all these press releases. There's just a few more things that I did want to touch upon that weren't covered with the press releases. And let me just scroll through here. Let's see. So again, February 12th, looking at Kamala's Twitter, and I just did a search on coronavirus. It wasn't it was super complicated. February 12th, again, she posts the link. She posts a video about, the fact that Trump administration officials did not show up to this hearing. February 18th, she also reiterates that. February 26th, she discusses that Trump has an inadequate a plan for addressing coronavirus. February 28th, showing people how to protect themselves. February 29th, she talks about her letter to Donald Trump. I've already discussed that. March 2nd, talking about how coronavirus has an effect on low income workers. Let's see. March 6th, this must be the hearing with Ken Cuccinelli, and discussing the need to address the fact that we have 2 to 3 of low income workers don't have paid sick leaves. So March 8th, no single racial or ethnic group is more susceptible to coronavirus. Did y'all see people saying that Black people can't get coronavirus? That was stupid. But the point of Kamala's tweet was to say there's no excuse for discrimination against Asian Americans and Asian immigrants, period. She called out Kevin McCarthy for calling it Chinese coronavirus. It called it racist, dangerous. It cites discrimination against Asian Americans and Asian immigrants. There's a clip from her press conference March 12th. March 12th, again, talking about her paid sick leave. What else? Anything else? Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught her on the NAACP town hall, where she made it a point to talk about checking on the elderly and give them a call, offer to get them groceries. Remember that isolation can lead to depression. So I thought that was a really nice human reminder that we could all use. Talking about, hey, the importance of this census, even despite all the coronavirus stuff that's going on. Anything else? Anything else? Oh, I thought this was another good one. Millions of people in America speak a language other than English in their home. The CDC must make coronavirus guidance accessible to everyone. The lack of preparedness is completely unacceptable. They didn't even have the coronavirus guide in Spanish. That's ridiculous. I voted yes on Families First Coronavirus Response Act. This bill will provide 10 days of paid sick leave and 3 months of paid family leave for many workers and coronavirus testing at no cost. But let's be clear, this bill is a start and Congress must do more. And today she's talking about how the lack of coronavirus testing is a big problem. And I don't think that anybody can argue that point. So that was on her Senate, Senator Kamala Harris Twitter. I'm sure there's a lot more things. For instance, on her non-Senate Twitter, she talks about how the impact of coronavirus on low-income students who are being sent home because of school shutting down, but they don't have another place to go. So I say all this to say, if you're even still watching, that this is just what's on a press release. This is just what's on Twitter. It would be foolish to believe that that's the extent of Kamala Harris's efforts, but it is worth noting that those efforts exist. They are when I talk about why Senator Kamala Harris is exceptionally qualified to be vice president, when I talk about why you can't do the fill in the blank black thing, you can't do the fill in the blank VP thing, it's because experience matters. And I think in the crisis that we are experiencing right now, who got time for training wheels? I don't think we have time for that. We need somebody who is intimately involved with responding to this crisis, who can hit the ground running and really quickly ramp up the government's response, because Trump ain't it. The Republicans ain't it. And for those of you that would say, well, she can do that as a senator, she can do it as vice president even better. So this isn't a Kamala for VP video. It's a Kamala is doing a kick-ass job in the Senate, and aren't we fucking lucky that she's taking into account all of these things. I didn't get to the tweet. It must not have had the right keywords to show up in my search. But, again, Kamala Harris has talked about domestic workers. She's talked about farm workers. She's talked about healthcare workers. She's talked about sexual assault survivors. She's talked about domestic violence survivors, abuse survivors, because she has that history as being DA and a prosecutor before in Alameda County of prosecuting child molesters, rapists, and abusers and things like that. And so her history, her record continues to inform her public policy making and her advocacy. And I think that's a great thing. And so I just wanted to highlight that. There probably is a better way of doing it, but that's just the way that I chose to do it. And like I said, I will have a thread on this to supplement all this information for people who don't want to listen to me talk for 47 minutes. But if you have listened, then thank you for listening. It's not exciting material. Unfortunately, a pandemic is not exciting, Jay. I can't sass my way to no fucking excitement with coronavirus. But hopefully it was informative. Have a good one.